This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 1262 of Horse Tip Daily, your almost everyday morsel of helpful hints, useful facts, and practical techniques for horse folks. Brought to you today by Hyndsight Vision Systems. Greetings, horse people. Coach Jen here, and thanks for tuning in to Horse Tip Daily. Today's tip features Dr. Tanya Cubitt from Performance Horse Nutrition, and she takes a look at why we've always been told to feed our horses multiple small meals each day. And for that matter, what exactly is a small meal? And we'll get right to our tip after this from Hyndsight Vision Systems. Hyndsight Vision Systems, offering horse owners durable, portable, wireless, rear-view vision cameras with tons of versatility. Hyndsight Vision Systems' Journey line of wire-free camera and monitor systems is available in both standard and wide-angle versions. Hyndsight Vision Systems are rugged. Both camera and monitors are water and temperature resistant. Hyndsight Vision Systems are also robust, with the ability to transmit signal for up to 1/3 of a mile, and there are hardwired and wireless installation options. Hyndsight systems are versatile. You can pair up to 4 cameras with a single monitor, and several mounting options are available. Visit www.hyndsightvision.com. And I'm so happy to welcome back to Horse Tip Daily Dr. Tanya Cubitt from Performance Horse Nutrition. How are you doing today, Dr. Cubitt?
I am great, Jennifer. Again, thanks for having me back.
It's so fun when you stop by because I learn so much and I feel smarter and my horses are better for it.
Well, I'm glad that's the case.
Yeah, and well, this past couple of tips have been inspired by listener questions. So listeners, keep sending those questions our way because it inspires us to ask good things. You hear all the time we should be feeding our horses multiple small meals every day when it comes to their concentrates or their feed. Well, small is a relative term, so maybe you could help us out. What exactly is a small meal?
This is a fantastic question to whichever listener wrote this in. This is a really great question because I always like to answer this question by going back to the very beginning. Let's go back to what is the horse designed to do, and then we'll look quickly at the digestive system so that you understand why it's physically a bad idea to feed large quantities of concentrates in a single meal. So let's think about what is the horse designed to do? What does he do if you just throw him out in the field and let him have at it? He constantly grazes small amounts continuously throughout the day. They'll graze 17 hours a day, and they're constantly just chewing small bits of forage and swallowing it, and it's trickling through their digestive system. Some people call them trickle feeders for that very reason, because the digestive system is designed and it has the capacity to take small amounts of food, digest it, break it down, and the body absorbs it continually. It's not designed, if we said the same about a dog or a cat, or say a lion in the wild, a lion is not continuously just nibbling on rabbits in the wild. He hunts something, kills it, eats it. Sometimes they throw it up and eat on it a little bit throughout the day, but really they gorge on food, and then that has to sustain them. Their digestive system has to have the capacity to be able to digest, absorb, and utilize large quantities very infrequently. The horse is not like that, though. He's got to be small amounts frequently. So that should start to answer the question. Small amounts frequently. That's why we say that. I don't like to feed any more than 3 to 5 pounds of concentrate in a single meal. Now, let's not take forage into that, because the hay, I would prefer that they had, if they're in stalls, hay, ad lib, let them eat as much as they want, because they're just constantly nibbling away on that. But when it comes to the feed that you put in the bucket, the concentrated grains, 3 to 5 pounds is the max. Let's quickly go through the digestive system, and now we'll understand physically why it just doesn't work to feed larger quantities than that, or where you run into problems, and really all you're doing is creating expensive manure. The teeth are the first part of the digestive system. They're going to chew sideways, mix with saliva so that they can swallow the food down the esophagus, which is a 4-foot-long pipe with muscles all the way down that's going to push the food down into the stomach. Now, the stomach is where we start to get breakdown. We've got acids here that are going to break down the food. We get some digestion. But if you look at the stomach in a picture in relation to the small intestine and the large intestine, it's very small. If we looked at a lion's stomach, it's very large. So we have this really small stomach, which really dictates meal size. Because if you feed large quantities, more than, say, 5 pounds, it's just going to flow through that stomach very quickly, go into the small intestine. It's not going to have had enough time in the stomach getting broken down by the acid. Then we get partially undigested foods going into the small intestine. So the stomach is really small. That is our first indicator that we need to feed small meals. Then we go to the small intestine. The small intestine is like a big long garden hose. There are enzymes here that break down food. Depending on the digestibility of the food, can take anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes to 3 to 4 hours for the food to pass through the small intestine. But it also has one of the main enzymes is called amylase, and it breaks down starch. And there's only a certain amount of it. And so if we feed the horse too much cereal grain, it's too high in starch, then that amylase is going to get used up, and then we're going to have undigested starches flowing through the large intestine. Or if we feed grains that haven't been processed, say you're feeding whole corn or whole barley that hasn't been broken down, then that amylase isn't able to break it down, and it's going to flow through into the large intestine undigested. So again, another reason why we say small meals, because we've got a small stomach, we've got only a certain amount of these enzymes. Then we go into the large intestine. Now, most of the time of digestion is spent here in the large intestine, up to 40 hours, depending on the digestibility. And this is where primarily most of your fiber is digested. So that also gives us a clue that the horse is supposed to eat more fiber than anything else. So give him ad-lib fiber. Let him eat as much as he wants, within reason, of course. If it's a fat horse, then you've got a limit. But I don't like to feed any more than 3 to 5 pounds of your cereal grain in a single meal. Now, if you're feeding much larger quantities than that, lactating broodmare, you're trying to keep weight on her, racehorse that's feeding, has to eat 18 pounds of grain, for example, to maintain body weight and exercise level, that's where management becomes extremely critical. You have to be breaking that up into 4 or 5 meals a day so that you can simulate that trickle feeding, that constant, continuous small amount of nutrients constantly trickling through the digestive system. So it was a really long answer for a short answer, which is 3 to 5 pounds. But I want to give your listeners the reason why. I think if you can understand why, you're going to remember it more than if I just say 3 to 5 pounds.
3 to 5. And what is 3 to 5 pounds? So this, of course, every time you give me an answer to a question, I have more questions.
Sure.
So if my horse gets a 3-quart scoop of feed in his meal, which with a sweet feed is going to be somewhere to the tune of 2.5 to 3 pounds.
Sure.
If I give him that scoop of feed immediately after he has consumed 10 pounds of hay as fast as he can because he hasn't had hay in 6 hours, is that going to make a difference to how quickly it moves through the digestive tract? Because way back in the day in Pony Club, we were always taught that we were supposed to give the horses hay first because then he would eat his grain slower. Well, it's been my experience, my horse eats his grain just as fast.
It really depends on the horse. I do still recommend that people feed hay first to slow the horse's rate of consumption. Now, there's been a lot of studies done on whether feeding hay first changes the rate of passage of that grain through the digestive system, and it really doesn't. But I still recommend feeding hay first because it does, in most cases, slow the rate of consumption down. Not the rate of passage, but the rate of consumption. So, you try lots of different things. If you have a horse that eats really quickly, if feeding hay first doesn't work, you can put some bricks in his feed tub or wet the feed.
Things like that, yeah. When they eat their hay, they're producing saliva.
Yes.
And then when that goes down, that helps to buffer excess acid in the stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Is that beneficial to the digestion of the grain?
I would say that's neutral. The grain itself, when it gets into the stomach, having just food in there in general is going to dilute that stomach acid. And it's designed that way. It's designed to have fiber and a bit of cereal, a bit of seed head, really, if you looked in the wild. So I would say that would be neutral, a neutral effect.
A neutral effect. So
not one way or the other.
That age-old give hay before grain still stands.
Yes.
All right. Size of the meal really doesn't need to be more than 3 to 5 pounds. Otherwise, you need to split it up.
Yep.
All right. Now, I've heard growing up, we used to, we feed sweet feed. And one of the sales pitches that the feed dealer used to give us to get us to buy the more expensive pelleted feed, because back in the day when pelleted feeds first came out, they did cost more, was, well, look, your horse's manure has oats in it. He's not digesting those oats. You need to feed him pelleted feed. Is that really an oat that's not been digested, or is it just an empty shell that looks like an oat?
It's an empty shell. Most times it's an empty shell that looks like an oat. Unless you were feeding 7, 8, 9 pounds of oats in a single meal, then yeah, quite likely it could be a whole oat because, as I said, there's not enough of those enzymes to break down those oats. So the oat, that seed coat is very fibrous. It has a lot of non-digestible fiber in it. So always you're going to see that there. But whether it's got the meat still in there or not, it just depends on usually the quantity of oats you were feeding in the first place.
Well, there you go. See, that was a bonus. That was a bonus tip, everybody.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for answering that perplexing question. And for folks whose question marks are still floating above their heads and have more nutrition questions, where can they find Dr. Cubitt?
They can find me at performancehorsenutrition.com. If you go on our website, you can find our phone number, our email, and you can call us or email us questions anytime.
All right. Thank you very much for stopping by, Dr. Cubitt. Well, there you have it. This podcast was made possible through the generous support of Hyndsight Vision Systems and listeners like you. Learn how you can help support Horse Radio Network programming and apply for auditors-only perks by going to horsetipdaily.com and clicking on the Become an Auditor banner. This is Coach Jen, and I'll be back again soon with another tip. So until then, go ride your horse. The Horse Radio Network and the Horse Radio Network hosts are not responsible for statements made by guests on the Horse Tip Daily. Please use your own judgment when listening to the tips on this show.